On August 23, 2014, citizens of Sierra Vista, Arizona formed together to have a candidate sign wave at Veterans Memorial Park. Lots of great people showed up, as well as some of the candidates that are running for office. Those candidates include Chuck Wooten for Congress, Frank Riggs for Governor, Tom Crosby for Sierra Vista Mayor, Craig Mount for City Council, and some others dropped by as well. We caught up with the candidates and asked them some questions. First, we spoke with Chuck Wooten. We asked him what his stance was on immigration reform. This is what he had to say.
My stance on immigration reform is actually very simple. I oppose it in any form that it takes. To me, it's nothing more than amnesty, and amnesty is nothing more to me than awarding American citizenship to people who have entered our country illegally. I'm absolutely opposed to it. And not only am I just opposed to it, but I'm opposed to it for the following reasons. First of all, it's going to destroy what's left of the middle class. We've already seen the effects of the amnesty that's been granted by the president by executive fiat. And when he's done these things, we've seen the effects in the job market where there's fewer jobs, and the jobs that are there, the wages are actually getting lower and lower. So there's nothing good comes out of this. I know that it's being done for political reasons, and therefore I just absolutely cannot stand what the effects that it's having on the American public and our society. We should not be granting amnesty to anyone here illegally. We have an immigration system in this country, and it's run by a set of laws, and those laws are absolutely fine. We don't need to reform something that isn't broken. And the Washington establishment and the politicians and the people in the moderate right and on the far, all the way to the far left, will tell you that we need to reform immigration. That's nothing but a political ploy to grant amnesty. And the laws that we have on the book are sufficient, and that's the way that we need to stand.
Then we asked him to tell us about Second Amendment rights.
Our Second Amendment rights are sacred. And I support the Second Amendment exactly how it's written in the Constitution. Not adding anything, not taking anything away. As a matter of fact, just yesterday I was informed by the National Association of Gun Rights that I scored a perfect 100%, and I was the only candidate in CD2 to have achieved that. And as a matter of fact, to the point that one of my opponents, Martha McSally, her political motives were actually questioned because of her lack of response to the National Association of Gun Rights. So the Second Amendment is near and dear. It's one of the things that makes America the great country that it is. We cannot tamper with that in the slightest.
Finally, we asked him to tell us about term limits.
When we elect representatives, we do have defined terms for those particular positions. For example, we've got 2 years for the House of Representatives, 6 years for the Senate. Those are there by design by the Founding Fathers, and the reason that they guarded against overstaying that, but because it's not specifically articulated with a term limit, then folks like, for example, Charlie Rangel from New York can go there, and he's on his 20th term. That's extremely wrong. So what happens is these politicians, this becomes a career path for them. It becomes their career choice, and it's never meant to be a career choice. I'm the only candidate in Congressional District 2 for Arizona that actually signed the U.S. Term Limits Pledge to not only co-sponsor but also vote affirmatively for a constitutional amendment to instill term limits to the United States Constitution.
One of the candidates that we caught up with at the event was Craig Mount, candidate for Sierra Vista City Council. We asked Craig Mount to tell us his position on the red flex cameras that are in the city.
When I started going door to door, and I knocked on more doors than any other candidate and got more signatures than any other candidate, after about 700 people saying, "What are you going to do about the cameras?" I started doing my research. And the research that I came back was that they need to go. That was the ultimate conclusion. But the research showed that there were a number of organizations that were against them. It was the NAACP, the AARP, various political groups on both sides of the spectrum. It also came back that the company that we had a contract with was under investigation for corruption. Specifically, the person who even signed us up is facing about 9 counts of felony indictment for corruption. So for me, the cameras need to go. There's a variety of reasons. A lot of them are constitutional. I believe that there's also an economic portion here where you have about $2 million that is projected to leave the city. So I think for all of these reasons, these cameras probably need to go away.
Next, we asked Craig how he feels about the water shortage.
You know, I was endorsed by the Sierra Vista Herald, which I think is probably one of the first times that somebody who's fiscally conservative has ever been endorsed by the Herald, and they did say that I kind of was dismissive on the water issue, and I don't believe that's the case. What I am on the record of saying is that we live in the desert. We should be mindful and conservative of the way that we use water. But the challenges with the water issue is that there's about 30 years of legal wrangling going on between the developers, the housing developers, and then also environmental extremists. And they've got everything all kind of locked up. So what I'm waiting for is to find out what's the definitive proof. I don't like to make a rash decision. I like to make a decision based off all the facts available. And right now everybody shows up with their own scientists and their own lawyers, and they just continue to block each other in court. I think that the water issue is something that's severely impacting us from an economic standpoint. It's a threat to the fort if we don't find some sort of resolution. And I would be very interested as more data came out to pick the right choice as opposed to just picking a choice for some sort of ideological purpose.
Finally, we asked Craig Mount what was his position on King's Court.
It was essentially given to the city for $1 or basically a donation, and that made a very small but vocal and happy group of people satisfied that they got to use the courts. But the building itself needs a lot of work. It would cost too much money to bring it up to code. I don't want to burden the taxpayers with that. Ultimately, I'm going to vote to give the council the option to sell it. However, what I believe is that our economic environment here in Sierra Vista is not conducive to sell this thing at the value that it probably could be worth. So I think probably the best thing to come out of this is we'll probably be able to keep those 6 courts that are there, demolish the building, put up something that's very easy to maintain, such as a park, a dog park, something along those lines. But the option to sell should be there until that kind of plays out. So I think King's Court should be sold. I think the lesson is that the city shouldn't get in the real estate business. It should stay out of it and let the market determine what happens to this thing, and that includes being sold or going up for bankruptcy. And vote for me on August 26th. Thank you.
Then we caught up with Tom Crosby, candidate for mayor of Sierra Vista. We asked him why they call him the champion of the taxpayers. This is what Tom said.
Well, Don, they call me the champion of the taxpayer because in 2012, myself and my friend Tony Wentz, we went around town and put up big signs regarding the SSVEC franchise agreement because the city council did not want to put the truth in the ballot language. I made a motion to put the truth in the ballot language, and that motion was not seconded by your current mayor or anybody on the 2012 city council. So, I mean, that's a big secret hidden tax that everybody would have had to read 7 pages of legalese fine print in the newspaper or check out the whole franchise agreement with the city clerk and able to do that. And of course, the early voters were denied even the slightest bit of information on that, Don, because the early ballot material that was sent out didn't contain anything about the franchise agreement or the 4% tax, and the early ballot material even misdirected voters on where to find the information. So voters were just completely, in my opinion, they just got ripped off in 2012 by that SSVEC tax. But wait, there's more. And so Americans for Prosperity, knowing all about this because I was telling them all about it, because you know what, Don? I wanted that rating, champion of the taxpayer. I knew I wanted that rating. To my knowledge, I'm the only one running for office around here that has that rating from Americans for Prosperity, and that's because of my friend Tom Jenny over there at Americans for Prosperity.
Next, we asked him why he should be mayor.
I should be mayor because I will bring a higher level of honesty and openness to the office of mayor in Sierra Vista. Additionally, I will reform the city government because currently the executive of the city is the manager and he is unelected. So that would be the equivalent of a parliamentary system where the parliament hires the, like in Britain, what do they call that guy? Anyway, the prime minister, where they elect the prime minister or something like that. And we don't have that system of government. And at least in Britain, the prime minister is elected. But here in Sierra Vista, the chief executive of the city is unelected. And so you have right then an inherent imbalance of power in the city government. You don't even say it's leaning towards the executive branch. It's just completely over on the executive side of the three branches of government. And that's the leadership of the city, which is followed by the mayor and the city council.
Finally, we asked Tom Crosby what his position was on border security.
My position on the border, Don, is, well, first of all, many people know that I was a Border Patrol pilot and intelligence agent, and I started out as a ground pounder Border Patrol agent in 1984 in El Paso, Texas. So I went through amnesty in 1986, and I went through the amnesty again in 1990, and those were extremely disgraceful, and there was just no way that was an honest way to protect your border. But one of the effects was, at that time, is it took agents off the border, and they gave them better jobs and higher pay to go be adjudications officers all over the country. And so guess what? Apprehensions went down on the border so they could say, hey, this amnesty's working, the apprehensions are down. So Don, I have this joke that I say about how to interpret Border Patrol statistics. I don't know if you've heard it or not. It goes like this. Apprehensions are up. It's working. Apprehensions are down. It's working. Whatever it is, the Border Patrol management is going to tell you that it's working. Now, fortunately, all that time I was in the Border Patrol, I never took a dime of management money. Okay, so my position on the border, the military should be involved in border protection. And here's my bumper sticker slogan about the Border Patrol is, the Border Patrol agent is the border. The Border Patrol agent is the border. Why do I say that, Don? Well, I'll tell you why. It's because you can have a revolving door, Don, or you can have a gold-plated revolving door, or you can have a gold-plated, diamond-studded, turbine-powered satellite downlink revolving door. But Don, at the end of the day, buddy, it's still a revolving door. So the only answer is to stop illegal immigration. Stop border crossing. That's the answer, okay? Now, you also have to round up illegal aliens that are already in the country, and even though like the Obama administration will say something like a figure of 11 million aliens, according to the National Association of Former Border Patrol Officers, we estimate that number is closer to 30 million, Don. 30 million illegal aliens in the country. And it's just a disgrace. And it's a purposeful attempt to destroy the country, in my opinion. That's my opinion on the border, Don.
Finally, we caught up with Frank Riggs at the event. Frank Riggs is running for governor of Arizona and is noted for his stance against Common Core. We asked Frank Riggs to tell us more about that. This is what the candidate had to say.
I'm very much opposed to Common Core because it represents the further federalization of K-12 education and the nationalization of the standards and tests that we would be forced to use to educate our kids. K-12 education is fundamentally a responsibility of state and local government. It's how we spend 40% of the state taxpayer dollar. And I've promised I will use the executive authority of the governor's office to repeal Arizona's participation in Common Core on day one. I'm the only candidate for governor who has made that promise in order to restore local control and decision-making in K-12 education while protecting the autonomy of charter schools and protecting parental rights, guarding against the sharing of very private data and information about their children with outside authorities, without their knowledge, much less their permission. So very much want to protect parental rights, parental school choice, and homeschooling in the state of Arizona. So we will get rid of Common Core. I will demand the resignation of the members of the State Board of Education who voted to adopt Common Core, and I'll work with the state legislature to defund Common Core, which the Arizona Association of School Business Officials said will otherwise cost us over $350 million to fully implement.
We also asked him about SB 1062.
SB 1062 is legislation that we probably need to revisit in our state, and that is because the city of Phoenix, obviously the largest city in the state, has now made sexual orientation, sexual preference, a protected class under Phoenix municipal law. So in other words, they've changed, or they're proposing to change state law, which currently does not make sexual preference or sexual orientation a protected class under state anti-discrimination law. But because the largest city in the state has done that, I think we need to revisit SB 1062 and protect private property owners, private business owners from being forced to compromise on their moral and religious beliefs.
As candidate for governor for the state of Arizona, immigration is a major deal here. We asked Frank about his stance on immigration.
Well, I am the only candidate for governor with a deep background, lots of experience in fighting illegal immigration, going all the way back to when I was a police officer and deputy sheriff, a first responder, enforcing the law on the streets, actually arresting, as I did on many occasions, illegal immigrants for serious crimes. As a member of Congress, I helped get the funding to build the double fence on California's border with Mexico, which now extends into the Yuma sector of our border, which is relatively secure. It's the Tucson sector of our border, which is obviously a subject that is near and dear, or maybe I should say a painful subject, for the residents of Cochise County, which shares 83 miles of international border, the 83 miles of the Tucson sector of the border with Mexico. But it's the Tucson sector of our border that remains wide open and where we continue to have infiltration into our state. And that infiltrated border, that porous border, represents a national security threat, and national security is the highest responsibility of the federal government, and it also represents a threat to public health and safety, and protecting the public health and safety is the highest responsibility of state government. So I'm going to work to get the funding to secure the border, period, and end of discussion, including using state law enforcement assets, if necessary, to secure the border. I also want to vigorously enforce the provisions of SB 1070. The author of SB 1070, former state senator, state Senate President Russell Pierce, has endorsed my candidacy for governor. I strongly support SB 1070, the provisions that would apply state sanctions against employers who knowingly hire illegal immigrants. And I support the provisions of SB 1070 that would allow a local law enforcement officer, when the local law enforcement officer has probable cause to believe that someone is in our country illegally, to be able to arrest that person and enforce federal and state immigration laws.
Overall, the sign-waving event was a success. A great lineup of candidates with lots of great people. Remember, August 26th is the primary election in Arizona. Please make it a point to get out and vote. And when you do, remember these candidates.